Welcome to Easy Style with Sammy. I'm your host, Sammy Bedell-Mulhern. Each episode, I invite a friend, family member, colleague, or just someone I've met on this journey called life to come and share their personal style and approach to business, parenting, life, and everything in between. You'll hear motivational and inspirational stories that will help you refine and build your own personal style. Remember, style is easy when it comes from within. Hey, Sammy here, doing a solo episode, which I haven't done since my first solo episode, I think back in episode 3, where I kind of introduced myself and shared a little bit about my story with you. I've had so many amazing conversations over these past few episodes and have learned and seen some common threads that I wanted to come on and share with you in case you haven't listened to all of the episodes or in case you just kind of need a little jump start to your mindset. I'm really excited to share some of these common threads and wanted to do that on episode 13. It's a lucky number here in our household. It's the day my daughter was born. It's her lucky number and we just love it. So it seemed like a good episode to do a little bit of a recap on. I apologize in advance. I am struggling with a little bit of a cold, so if my voice sounds funny, I really apologize. We're going to work through this episode together, and I'm so excited to share some of these trends and thoughts that all of these amazing humans have been sharing so far, and some trends that are coming up in episodes we haven't yet watched on the Easy Style with Sammy podcast. You here with me? So there's so many different ways that we approach life, that we approach our businesses, that we approach our personal lives. But what I've loved is the common threads that have kind of come together from some of my friends, colleagues, coworkers, all of the things. And the first one is really listening. This has been coming up over and over and over again in my marketing podcast, Digital Marketing Therapy. It came up here. And it's really just about what can we learn when we actually take the time to listen, to ask questions and hear the feedback. It is such a crazy world. There's things happening all the time. It's so busy, and it can be hard to sometimes just slow down, take a breath, and listen. But when we do, you never know what conversations are going to come about. And we heard this from several of our guests, like Christine, like Allie and Chelsea. Listening and having conversation can really be a great way to continue to move forward in what you want for yourself, both personally and professionally. You never know what that conversation is going to lead to, what relationships it might build, what opportunities it might bring about. And so having those conversation starters handy and having conversations with as many people as you can be amazing. So some of those conversation starters can be things like, hey, do you come here often? Which might sound like a pickup line, but just try it out. You might get a good laugh. Or what's your favorite thing to order? Or, is there another one of these, in this part of the area or whatever, where maybe your office is or where you live, whatever it might be, just coming up with a handful of conversation starters can be great. And then just see where it goes. People like to talk about themselves. So if you can start that conversation and just ask thoughtful questions and listen, then it's a great opportunity to determine if it's somebody you want to carry on a conversation with. Maybe share a business card. Maybe they're part of a mom's group. Maybe they're part of a dad's club. Maybe they have a gym recommendation. Whatever way that it is for you to continue to follow up and build that relationship further, if it's something that makes sense. And you can learn that so much more by listening than talking. Odd thing to say, since what I do on this podcast is talk, but we're here for it, right? And then this lends to kind of the second tip and thing that I've heard from many people, which is learning how to communicate and talk with lots of different people has come from, yes, conversations, but also travel and pushing yourself outside your comfort zone. Now, Christine and Anne shared some of this in their podcast episodes about how they think being more empathetic and talking and being able to talk to lots of different types of people came from their travels, both in the United States and worldwide, and just having conversations with people that they've met. Now, I was fortunate to travel a lot as a kid, and we used to do a ton of family road trips. And I remember my dad always wanting to take the scenic route. And that usually meant taking us through highways, the road less traveled, and often stopping at local diners. Like, the ones from the movies where you walk in and the bell rings over the door and everybody turns to look because they're like, we don't know who you are. And I remember being appalled and embarrassed as a kid by this activity. Now I think it's amazing. We got to see parts of the country that we would have never, ever seen because they weren't on the main interstate. And we also had conversations with all sorts of people. This also happened when we traveled internationally. He would always ask to find the local spot. And I remember being in the Bahamas somewhere. I don't remember what island it was, but we asked for the local best place to get some local cuisine. And we ended up in basically some dude's backyard with a barbecue. The guy was like, this is the best food on the island. You got to check it out. We went, we had a great time, hung out with his neighbors and just had good conversation. And so by doing this, you learn so many different things about different people. And I think it just helps build more of an empathetic mind to the people in your world. Now we're pushing the same situation with our daughter when she goes to college. And Christine talked about this a little bit too in her podcast with her daughter in college. Making sure you live in the dorms, making sure you're surrounding yourself with people that are different or people that maybe don't think the same way as you. Those are some of the best conversations if you can learn and grow from each other. And I think something that's sorely missing in our communities right now. Now, it doesn't have to mean international travel or even domestic travel. It could just literally be going to your favorite restaurant and sitting at the community table and having a conversation with somebody versus sitting at a table by yourself, or even just going to get coffee by yourself and seeing what happens. Sit at the coffee bar instead of a table. Go to a different restaurant somewhere in a different part of the city. Go explore. Go to a museum. Go have conversation. Push yourself outside of the box and go back to the first thing that I said, have conversations and listen and see what happens. You have nothing to lose and something amazing could come out of it. I need to take my own advice as well and get out more. My husband's telling me this as well. Post-COVID, I think it's hard to really figure out where do you fit in? What do you want to do? And Katie talked about this in her episode as well. When we talk about going back into the world, how do we collaborate? How do we decide the things that we choose to do and those we don't know if we want to do? And it comes to really being honest with what is a hard yes and what's what is our gut telling us might not be the right thing for us. And Allie and Chelsea talked about this also, the self-awareness and the collaboration and understanding that there's times in our lives where we need to grind, where we need to hustle, where we need to put in more effort, but also times in our lives when we need to take a step back and breathe. And what does that look like? Maybe when you have young kids, you're stepping back a little bit. And then when they leave the house, you can hustle a little bit more and kind of build and grow your own career. Maybe when you have aging parents, you have to slow down a little bit again. Or maybe you have a health issue that needs to be taken care of. So self-awareness and self-care is definitely a topic that has come up a lot on this podcast. Listening to your gut, listening to your intuition. Anne talked about this as well, trusting what it is that you need. Amy talked about how to build confidence in yourself to show up in the way that you want to show up, which I think is really important as well. If you don't know who you are, then you don't know where you're going, and it can be really hard. We've had a lot of conversations about collaboration within teams with Molly and Becky and Lisa, and how can we really take care of ourselves and understanding the business we want to grow and how we want to grow it. So there is no cookie cutter way to do any of these things. And that's why I love the conversations that we've been having, because you can do it your own way, no matter what. If it's direct sales, if it's a consulting business like I have, if you have a 9-to-5, you can be a leader just by the way that you show up and how you treat people and how you work through and move through some of these things. In our most recent podcast, Erin talks about how she took her skill set and is now starting a nonprofit because she knows she's good at making money and she wants to help more organizations that are supporting wildlife animal rescue to be able to do those things, because that's not something they're best at. So how can you think innovatively and think about the thing that you love to do and match it up with the skill set that you're great at to really create this life of your dreams. That's really the ultimate goal of this podcast, is to help you build balance, to help you build happiness, and to help you build your life in the style that you want. And so I love the self-care and the self-awareness piece that keeps coming up, because if we're not taking care of ourselves, we can't take care of others. We can't have the growth that we want in our business. So listening and communication, travel, push yourself out of your comfort zone so that you can see things differently, experience new things, have different conversations. Make sure you're building in self-awareness and self-care so that you're making the choices that are best for you right now. We don't have to have it all figured out right away. I don't have it all figured out. And in fact, that's one of the things that people say to me all the time. Well, you always have it all so put together. I promise you, I do not. I love having these kinds of conversations because it really helps me to kind of continue to work on myself and figure out where I'm going, what I'm doing, what my next step is, how I can be more successful in what success means to me, for my family, and my business. And the last thing that I really want to talk about is just kind of piggybacking off of that, which is always be learning. I always ask people to share their favorite resource on the podcast so that we can all kind of get inspiration. And some of the common threads are YouTube and podcasts, for sure. Like really making sure you're listening to people that are coming before us that have insights and wisdom to share on areas that we need. Because remember, you might hear the same thing over and over again. That's why I'm doing this episode. You might have heard some of these stories already, but maybe it just wasn't what you needed to hear in the moment. And now you're hearing me kind of recap some of these things, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I really needed to hear that today. How many times have you said, I really needed to hear that today? I drink my tea in the morning, and it always has like a little message on it. Today it says, appreciate yourself and honor your soul, which is a good thing for me because I'm getting over this cold, and just a great healthy reminder to not push myself too hard today. Do the things that I need to get done, and it's okay to take a rest. I also love sending my customers these little cards. They're called Thoughtfuls. This one's also vibrational frequencies, but it's just a mindful moment. They can pop it open and they get a message. But we usually get the message, the universe sends us the message when we need it. And so if we're always learning, we're always taking things in, we're always building, we're always connecting, we're going to hear the messages the universe needs us to hear when we need to hear them to make the right moments happen for us in our lives, if you're open to it. Now, I know I'm getting a little woo here, and I'm really sorry about that, but I really feel passionately about that and think that it's super true, and has definitely made an impact on certain moments in my life. Just breathing through certain areas of stress, putting out the strong intention for what I want to happen, and then being open to whatever can come my way. Be open to those conversations. Be open to the messages that I'm going to hear in my ears if I'm listening to a podcast. Just be open. So that's just my favorite takeaways and recaps from the first 12 episodes of Easy Style with Sammy. I hope that you have enjoyed them so far. It's really fun for me to have something that is just talking with some of my favorite humans, but not necessarily marketing and strategy. So I thank you for listening each week. We have new episodes out on Thursday. And if you want to be a guest on the podcast, if you have a story to share, I'd love to have you. You can email me at sammy@easystylewithsammy.com or hit us up on social media. We'll have all of those links in the show notes to this episode at easystylewithsammy.com/13. And that's SAMI. For now, thank you so much. Subscribe where you listen so you don't miss out on a single episode. They all come out on Thursdays. And leave us a review while you're there so we can get this in front of more and more people, inspire more people to live their best lives, and tell their stories. Remember that style is easy when it comes from within, and thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one.